As the best-selling vehicle in Mazda's US lineup, there's no questioning just how critically important the 2019 Mazda CX-5 is. Now, you guys are pretty familiar with this car. I showed you guys a first review back in 2017 when this model first came out. Now, fast forward 2 years, and Mazda is actually showing us a refreshed version of the CX-5, with the biggest change being 2 all-new trim levels and an all-new turbocharged engine underneath the hood. Now, with renewed competition in the form of the new Toyota RAV4 and Subaru Forester, how does this 2019 model stack up? That's what we're here to find out. So as you guys can see, I'm out here in this beautiful winter wonderland here in Whistler, British Columbia. And I'm out here because Mazda actually flew me out here, put me up for the night as a paid influencer to basically drive their entire CX lineup for 2019. Now, because the 2019 CX-5 is the one that you guys have been asking me to do, I'm going to focus this review solely on this refreshed model with the turbo engine. I will mention briefly that all the views and expressions and opinions in this video are strictly my own, and you guys better damn believe that I'm going to be very honest. So let's get on with the 2019 CX-5 review. So when it comes to the exterior design of the 2019 CX-5, you guys should be pretty familiar with this car. It was part of the all-new second generation that they first introduced back in 2017. And I'm happy to report that they didn't really make any changes for 2019 in terms of the front-end look. It doesn't really need any. You still have the same corporate Mazda 5-point grille. You have LED headlights, which are standard. This signature trim kind of has the adaptive LEDs, where it has an LED running light. It has an incandescent turn signal, and then you have LED fog lights here in the lower fascia. This giant, massive Mazda emblem here houses the radar sensor for their smart adaptive cruise control system and the automatic braking. And in this soul red crystal pearl color, it's still a very attractive looking crossover, one of the best compact crossovers that you can buy for this mainstream class. At the side profile, you can also see Mazda didn't make any changes to the overall look. I'm surprised because the new signature trim, I was expecting them to at least introduce an all new wheel design, which they kind of gave the signature trim a unique finish. I want to excuse the fact that the car is very dirty. As you can see, it's been snowing here all day today and the roads are just absolutely terrible, so the car's kind of covered in salt. Thankfully, Mazda did equip the car with some Toyo winter tires for this overall test, because this area here is literally seeing snow over the entire week. There's literally like 2 feet of snow on the ground. Now, the signature trim has these dark silver finish 19-inch wheels wrapped in 225 series tires. They actually didn't make these wheel sizes any larger, and they didn't update the design of the wheels, which is still a really good looking wheel. The car in general, when they redesigned it, didn't really change in terms of its dimensions. It's 106.3 inches long and 179 inches long overall. This is rightly smack in the middle in terms of the size between all the competitors, and compared to the previous first generation CX-5, this literally only got about 0.6 inches longer in overall length. So this car still represents a really good size, still has a very sleek, attractive look. I really like the overall design of the belt line here with the requisite gray cladding. And Mazda says this car still has roughly around 7.5 inches of ground clearance, which is really good if you guys plan to drive the vehicle in these kind of snowy conditions. So at the rear of the 2019 CX-5, again, there's nothing really here to let you know that this is the all-new turbo version. Not even a turbo badge on the back, not even a signature badge. It's still the same handsome-looking design that we've seen for the last 2 years. You have these LED combination rear taillights where it has an incandescent turn signal just like the front, which kind of mimics the front. No additional like spoilers here and there, but overall it's still a really clean look. Now down here you do have dual outlet chrome exhaust tips, which I guess you guys are probably eager. Let's take a listen of that turbo engine and see how it sounds. And it sounds really nice, just don't expect this thing to be like a Mazda Speed CX-5. This is more of just a premium compact crossover that has a little bit more power. Now in terms of the cargo capability, it hasn't changed versus the 2017 model that I showed you guys. With the seats up, you're looking at around just over 30 cubic feet of space. If you want to fold down the second row, which this car only offers 2 rows, you're looking at just under 60 cubic feet of space, which are good numbers. However, just keep in mind something like the new RAV4, the CR-V, a Forester offers roughly about 15 more cubic feet of space. If you look underneath the floor here, Mazda does give you a temporary spare tire, and then this power liftgate that's on my model works really well, although Mazda doesn't offer the hands-free function like some competitors. So the outside of the new CX-5 doesn't look any different, but let's move into the interior. Let me first look at the Mazda key fob. This is the same Mazda key fob they've been using for years. There's actually a new key on the new Mazda 3, which I'll show you guys eventually sometime next year when Mazda actually has the media drive and the vehicle is becoming available. Now, this signature trim comes standard with the company's smart key access system. Just like the previous, or the 2017 model, just touch the lock button over there. You can see the mirrors actually electrically fold in, which is a new feature. The old one did not have that. To unlock the door, there's no sensor on the back of the handle. You have to touch the button again, and that will unlock the doors for you, and then the mirrors will fold back out. Now, taking a look at the interior of this all-new signature trim, you can see it is slightly different versus the previous Grand Touring that I last showed you guys. That one, I believe, had like a parchment leather. If you guys want this brown Napa leather, you have to get this signature trim. It's kind of an upgraded leather. It's also heated and ventilated seats. That ventilated seat is actually a new feature for 2019. You don't have to get the signature to get the ventilated seats. It's actually included on the Grand Touring Reserve. You just have to go for the turbo engine. The signature trim also gives you real wood trim accents. You have satin chrome in the interior, and you have an upgraded leather on the steering wheel to kind of match the leather around the car. You can see it's a really elegant looking interior that literally puts a lot of luxury cars to shame, and that's kind of Mazda's goal. They're really going for that premium ambiance with a lot of their new products. Now, getting into this vehicle, you can see the step-in height hasn't really changed. You still have a really nice, easy step-in height, which kind of gives this SUV a really good practical nature, which is what a lot of people really like in this segment. Shutting the door, it sounds nice and solid, so it hasn't really changed versus the 2017 model that I last showed you guys. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, you can see it hasn't really changed when you look at the dashboard aside from just the new wood trim, but if you want to start the vehicle up, just put your foot on the brake, push the button here to fire up the engine. Now you can see there is a new gauge cluster here with a 7-inch display. We've seen this gauge cluster before on the CX-9 and the Mazda 6. You can see the head-up display in this vehicle is also really nice. It's an actual full-color head-up display. The engine, let's take a listen to that real quick. It actually lets you rev it up pretty high. This is the company's new turbo engine. You wouldn't know it though, just from starting it up. It sounds just like the base 2.5 liter engine. There's no turbo boost gauge in this car, which is surprising. I kind of wish they gave you that. There's no turbocharged anywhere badge. So Mazda's really good about hiding the fact that it's a turbo. And they really want you to know that when you're driving the vehicle. We'll go into the dynamics later. Now that is definitely an area where a lot of you have been asking about. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is now included on the 2019 model. And if you guys have a previous Mazda Connect system up from 2014 and so forth, you can have the dealer retrofit this. Unfortunately, it's going to cost you about $200 plus 2 hours of labor, so just under $500 to have that installed. It's going to vary, of course, depending on where you live. The reason being, it's you can actually blame Apple. Mazda says they wanted to make that upgrade free. However, because the hard drive for the USB had to be upgraded to actually work with the Apple CarPlay system, Mazda basically has to upgrade the entire USB. Thankfully, this will now become a quick charger. It'll be a 2.1 amp versus the slow charge that you got on the older Mazda Connect head units. But the rest of this interior, you can see, hasn't changed. Still class leading in terms of the materials. You have soft touch, you have genuine stitching here on this part of the dash where it's soft touch. Now you have real wood trim here. It's also soft touch over here on this part of the dash. You have satin chrome accents here, metal accents, which are nice. The stitching extends over to the door panels here with more wood. You have soft touch materials on the armrest here. The windows are express one touch for all four. You have those power folding mirrors, which I showed you before. You have 2-person memory seats with a 10-way power driver seat, and then you have a 6-way on the passenger side. You have buttons here for your power liftgate, your lane departure alert with steering assist. The steering wheel itself is heated, which you guys get on the Grand Touring models and up. The heat is only on the 3 and the 9 o'clock position on the wheel. It's actually not on the top or the bottom portion of the wheel. It's tilt telescoping. You have basically the same buttons that we've seen before on other Mazda products. The head unit here, you can see it is still a touchscreen. It's still a 7-inch display. I'm kind of disappointed that Mazda didn't make this a little bit bigger. Remember, remember, I've shown you guys a bigger 8.8-inch display on the newer Mazda 3. Expect that to carry over onto the other products. However, this is a nice addition just because it has the Apple CarPlay, it has the Waze and the Google Maps integration. Keep in mind that the touchscreen itself is blanked out when you guys are driving the vehicle. The reason being is Mazda does not like touchscreens. They think touchscreens are distracting. They want you to use the Mazda command controller, but Mazda does give you a choice when you're parked. Unfortunately, when you kind of just go back to the Mazda head unit, it hasn't changed. This is still the same old system, with the difference being if you go to applications, it'll have two new additions there, Apple CarPlay and of course Android Auto for all you Android users. The navigation hasn't changed. This is still their version of kind of Garmin. It's a really old navigation system, so I'm looking forward to seeing Mazda putting something new in the all-new Mazda 3. However, again, with Apple CarPlay, just use the Apple Map integration or Waze, which is nice. You have dual-zone climate control down here, your heated steering wheel buttons, you have your heated seat buttons, you have ventilated seats, of course, which are new, which are really nice. You have 3 levels for both the front seats, which are great. Really nice, high-quality feeling buttons and knobs. It's kind of similar to what I felt in like the new Accord, for example. The transmission, it's a 6-speed automatic. It's the same transmission in the CX-9 and the Mazda 6. When you put the vehicle into reverse, there's your backup camera, and then you're supposed to also get a 360 camera with this trim. However, mine is like an early production model, and it looks like it just doesn't have it, which is very strange. I'm going to start fiddling around here with the settings, and hopefully we can find out why the 360 camera isn't working. But basically the head unit interface here is all pretty much the same. You can see you can adjust your sound, your vehicle settings over there, devices. So not sure why mine doesn't have the 360 camera. It is included, but I'll have to figure out why this particular one, it just might be a pre-production model, just doesn't have that. Down here you can see electronic parking brake, your Mazda Connect head unit, 2 cup holders, a little bit of storage here. Not quite as much storage as some competitors because this center console is very wide. It's a nice padded area here with a little bit of a small storage area underneath the lid. The glove compartment, you can see, hasn't changed. It's still damped and lined with felt. It's a little bit of a smaller size versus some competitors. The seats, I find them to be really comfortable. I love the soft Nappa leather. It's just really expensive feeling. It's also really soft, and love the new heated and cooled function. A sunroof is standard on most of the trims. It's just the standard size sunroof. Mazda does not offer a pano sunroof, so you may still need to go to like the new RAV4 if you want that feature. But overall, Mazda's made some nice updates here with the tech, especially with the new instrumentation, and the interior is still definitely one of the nicest, just not one of the most roomiest cabins in the segment. So getting into the second row of the 2019 model, it hasn't really changed versus the 2017 that I showed you before. The rear seat in this car is a little bit smaller than some of the competition, and really it just comes to the fact that I guess this car is a little bit smaller in terms of the wheelbase versus some of the competition, but it's still not bad. This is pretty much where I have the front seat to drive right here, and I'm 5'7". There's plenty of leg room back here. The floor is not completely flat back here, which is a little bit disappointing, but you do get things like rear seat air vents. You have LED lighting because this is the signature trim, and then folding down this center armrest here will reveal 3-level heated seats with a USB. There's 2 USB ports in here, which is nice. Mazda also gives you 2 map pockets. All that soft touch materials from the front seats kind of carry over. Just one thing that they don't offer is something like a panoramic sunroof. You have to go to the competition to get that, but overall, the second row is still a really nice place to spend time. So underneath the hood of the 2019 CX-5, this is literally the biggest news about this vehicle. Whereas in the past, they only offered one engine, a 2.5 liter direct injection Skyactiv G naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. Now they basically added a turbo engine. This is now the up-level engine. It's available on the Grand Touring Reserve and the Signature trim, which are new trims for 2019. This is basically the same motor that I've shown you in the new CX-9 and the Mazda 6. Now in this application, it's a 2.5 liter with a dynamic pressure turbo. It's just a single scroll turbo, not a twin scroll like some competitors. And it's a relatively big motor, 2.5 liters. And if you guys feed it regular gas, it's going to give you 227 horsepower. Feed it premium, which Mazda says is recommended, and you'll get 250 horsepower. But regardless of the grade of fuel, you'll get 310 foot-pounds of torque, which I want to say is the most torque in the mainstream compact SUV segment. So those are great numbers. Now keep in mind, this is a smaller vehicle versus the CX-9. Mazda says this signature trim with all-wheel drive, which comes standard, this is their iActive all-wheel drive system, weighs around 3,800 pounds. It's about 200 pounds heavier than the base 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine, but it's about 550 pounds lighter than a comparably equipped Mazda CX-9. So this should be really, really good power in a vehicle this size. There's only one transmission choice available. It's a 6-speed Skyactiv automatic transmission, kind of down 2 to 4 gears compared to some of the competition. So Mazda is very confident that their 6-speed will still suffice in this application. So we'll get into the road and see how that performs. Now, fuel economy, in case you're wondering, this application is rated at 22 in the city, 27 on the highway. Regular gas, of course, is the recommended fuel, but if you want the full 250, you have to put premium. It's only about a 2 mpg drop versus the naturally aspirated engine, so not bad numbers, and it's roughly getting the same gas mileage as some of the other turbocharged competition. But I know you guys have been really anxious, so let's get out on the road and see how this turbo engine and the CX-5 performs. So the moment you guys have been waiting for, how does the all-new 2019 CX-5 turbo drive? Now, ever since this car came out, we've been begging Mazda for a turbo version of this vehicle, and they finally listened. Mazda's been doing a really good job at trying to listen to all their customers and what they want and so forth. Now, unfortunately, I am in British Columbia in the middle of December, and it's literally been snowing the last 3 hours. Now, thankfully, Mazda has fitted the car with a snow tire, either a Toyo snow tire or a Bridgestone Blizzak snow tire, and snow tires make all the difference in these kind of environments. I mean, sure, you can have their all-wheel drive system, which is really great. However, without snow tires, you won't be able to actually stop when you panic stop like this. And of course, the anti-lock brakes work a little bit, but very stable, very secure. I put my foot down. The car just has really good traction. So, you know, these kind of environments with the snow and everything, I've got plenty of confidence. That's the beauty about all-wheel drive with snow tires. You just can get onto these kind of roads and just really have no problems. Now, I'm not gonna be able to push the car as hard as I'd like because, as you guys can see, the road conditions aren't, great. So I don't wanna crash the car and die out here in the mountains, but I'll try my best to show you guys what the all-new turbo engine is like. But first of all, getting out here, thankfully it's paved here a little bit. There's a little bit of slush, but you immediately, just like that, notice the instant power or the extra power that this 2.5 liter turbo gives you. In a car that weighs about 500 pounds less than the CX-9, it's going to make a huge difference. Now, really, for me, I'm surprised that Mazda didn't upgrade the transmission. I wanted them to go with like an 8-speed, but here, this is relatively paved over here. Let's put our foot down. I'll put it into sport mode here. Wow, this thing really gets up to speed so quickly now. Not much turbo lag. Actually, it doesn't even feel like a turbo lag or a turbocharged car at all. All you feel is just very strong mid-range torque. It has that typical Mazda sound, so don't confuse this thing for being a Mazda speed. It's definitely not a Mazda speed, but when you put your foot down, it just will surge and push you back into the seat really nicely. There's no 0 to 60 times for this car, but the CX-9 does it in 7.4 seconds, weighing 550 pounds more. I would estimate this car would probably do it in 6.8, maybe 6.5 seconds on a good day. I can't push it as hard as I'd like to in these kind of conditions because I'm fearing for my life and I don't want to crash this thing out here in British Columbia. But like the pre-turbocharged version of this car that I drove a couple years ago, it's still one of the best handling cars. Now, what Mazda also did is they have updated the suspension geometry a tad to improve the handling, reduce the understeer, reduce the body lean. They've also added their G-Vectoring Control Plus. Now, of course, that doesn't really mean much to you and I. Basically, what Mazda did is they wanted the suspension and chassis to kind of react a lot more naturally and smoothly to your driver inputs, which I'll talk about later on, but there's a little bit of a straight road here. I'm gonna try to brake torque it a tad, see how it feels. Short shifts at 5,500 RPM. But wow, this thing is pretty quick now. This thing will smoke the last 2-liter turbo I drove in the GMC Terrain. It will smoke a CR-V now with the 1.5, which is important because before the CR-V was so much faster than this. It will smoke the new RAV4, unfortunately. So, Mazda's done a really good job by stuffing this turbo motor in there. It's gonna really appeal to a lot of people who used to want a Subaru Forester XT. This car has the driving dynamics. It has a conventional 6-speed auto. It's got all that torque, 310 pound-feet of delicious torque. is just insane for a car like this. I mean, I'm up here in the mountains of British Columbia, and I don't really feel like it's taxed whatsoever, and that's the beauty about turbocharged engines. I'm gonna get one to test when I'm back in DC. I'll be able to fully test it out. I'll maybe even try to do a comparison with it and the new RAV4 just to kind of try it out, but man, they've really done the right thing by stuffing a turbo engine in this car. Now, in terms of the rest of the driving dynamics of the CX-5, well, this is still a really pleasant driving car. It's a lot quieter than you would used to think of Mazdas before. The ride quality is definitely on the firmer side. But the noise levels are good. The engine doesn't really make too much in terms of noise. Actually, I'm actually surprised there's no paddle shifters on this car. You do have a manual mode over here, then you have a sport mode there in the transmission selector. That's really all you've got. The suspension's not adaptive. The ride is definitely firmer than some of the competition. The visibility in here, however, is excellent. Good view out of the front, good view out of the back. This pillar there here is a little bit large, but Mazda's safety tech system with all their driver assistance is standard on this trim level and standard on most of the trims for 2019. So they're really upping their game here in terms of quality, in terms of features. And really, unless you guys are planning to actually carry a lot of people in this car, like maybe you have 2 kids, the space in here is not quite as plentiful as what you get in some of the competition. But man, this thing is there's really a lot to like with this car. I'm having trouble finding anything wrong with it, honestly, aside from just the slightly cramped interior, and maybe it's just not, as visceral as I'd like it to be. But again, Mazda's kind of moving away from their old Mazda Speed Pass, which is a little bit sad, but they're really kind of embracing this Mazda premium environment. And the CX-5 is definitely one of the best representations of their new philosophy here. So Mazda actually had an all-wheel drive course, a dynamic drive course, where they set up this parking lot here and basically a foot of snow on the ground. So let me cue it over to that little quick driving area here. I'm gonna see how this car's all-wheel drive system handles, because Mazda says that this is one of the best all-wheel drive systems in the mainstream class. So Mazda is very proud of their all-wheel drive system. They call it iActive all-wheel drive. Basically, it's a front drive bias system that can predict road conditions and send power to the rear wheels before the front wheels even slip. So they set up this little snow course here in this parking lot. Let's see how this car performs, shall we? The back definitely likes to step out, which is unusual for a car like this. And they put some snow tires on this thing, so it grips pretty well because of it. Yeah, it's very secure, very stable, which is good. I definitely want to try going out one more time, see how this feels. So I'm going to make sure the traction control is turned off. The stability control is going to be on. I'm still feeling it kind of cut the power at certain times. So we're gonna go out for one more lap around this little course. I made sure that the traction control is turned off this time, because earlier in the first pass it was kind of cutting the power. But Mazda's basically set up this course here to demonstrate their iActive Sense all-wheel drive system, which is again a front drive bias system that will predict when the front wheels are going to slip and then send power to the back to compensate for that. This is not something like what you get in some of the German competitors where it's a rear drive based system, but for a front drive system that's more mainstream, it works really well, as we're going to demonstrate on this little course. Still cutting the power annoyingly. Still cutting the power very annoyingly, but the car definitely has good grip from the tires. But yeah, great all-wheel drive system from this car for sure. So earlier this year, I was able to drive the all-new versions of the Subaru Forester, the Toyota RAV4. Those are two really big heavy hitters in the segment. With Mazda roughly selling about 130,000 of these annually, it's still a really important vehicle for the company. This is literally the company's best-selling model. It has been outselling the Mazda 3, which used to be the best-selling model for a number of years now. So how has Mazda kept up with the 2019 model? Well, I'm happy to report that that all-new turbo engine is exactly what this vehicle needs. It now is literally one of the quickest vehicles on the class, whereas before it was literally one of the slowest. The fuel economy is pretty much the same, just 2 mpg difference, but with the added speed, I think it's definitely worth that increase. And the design, it's still one of the most beautiful looking crossovers. Mazda has added some features to the interior to address my concerns, like the Apple CarPlay, the Android Auto, the ventilated seats, the new 360 camera system. This is literally one of the best driving and best performing mainstream crossovers. And I think it's really gonna pull in a lot of buyers who would have previously considered a Subaru Forester XT because Subaru doesn't offer the turbo anymore and wanna go for one of these. Really the only downside with the CX-5 is the fact that you don't get quite as much cargo capacity, not as much rear seat space, and not as much storage in the front like you get in some of the competitors like the new RAV4 and CR-V. But if you're okay with that, this is literally one of the best driving and best looking mainstream cars that literally feels like you paid a lot more money than you actually did. Now, speaking of the price, what's it going to cost to put one of these in your driveway? Well, Mazda actually has kept the price pretty reasonable. It's only $200 more versus a comparable 2018 model. It starts at around $24,350. Now, of course, if you guys want that new turbo engine, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you at least $34,650 for the Grand Touring Reserve trim, which literally gives you the ventilated seats, the heated steering wheel, the heated rear seats. Now, if you guys want to spend $2,000 more for the signature trim, you have to, of course, get that brown leather interior. You'll get the 360 camera, you'll get the parking sensors, you'll get that frameless rearview mirror. All in this one, stickers for $36,850 plus the $1,000 destination charge, so around just under $38,000, which I know is a new, price high for a Mazda CX-5. However, keep in mind, a lot of the competition, if you want an up-level engine, they're going to charge you roughly the same amount of money, and Mazda does it while offering a car that looks, feels, and drives a lot more premium than its price would suggest. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Mazda CX-5 Signature Turbo. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.